comforted Tabitha. Meanwhile, Sarah, who was hovering near the diner, was contemplating whether to go in when Jim and his son approached her. The fear in Ethan had disappeared. He solemnly told Sarah that they were once good friends, and even if she had become scarier than a monster, he was no longer afraid of her. Sarah didn't respond as she watched the young boy walk away. She turned her gaze back to the diner, but she didn't have the courage to face the diner owner who loved her like her own daughter. Upon returning to the church, Sarah happened to meet Elgin, who had just arrived in town and was idling about, unaware of the mistakes Sarah had made in the past. So he casually struck up a conversation with her. It had been a long time since Sarah had confided in anyone, and she started talking about her deceased brother. Back in the day, the two of them had relied on each other in this town, especially during Christmas. They would rack their brains to collect small gifts. Now, the thing Sarah wanted to do the most was to retrieve those items as keepsakes. Elgin encouraged her, saying that one should strive for the happiness they desire. His words finally gave Sarah the determination she needed, so she resolutely walked into the diner. As expected, the diner owner blamed Sarah for the death of her husband. After hurriedly moving a box of items, she declared that she never wanted to see Sarah again. Sarah did not try to explain herself. She picked up the box and left, the sound of shattering bowls echoing behind her. Just then, Kenny rushed over. He snatched the box from Sarah's hands, scattering all the items inside. Perhaps that wasn't enough to vent his anger, so he smashed a ceramic doll. These were the small gifts that Sarah's brother had painstakingly collected, and she had always treasured them. But facing the deputy sheriff's violence, she just kept apologizing. Then she scrambled to pick up the items. Meanwhile, Jim and his son had just returned home and were met by Tabitha, who had been waiting at the door for a long time. Upon learning that Ethan had confronted Sarah and completely banished his fears, she felt a wave of relief. Ever since she and Victor had escaped from the demon's lair, Tabitha had inexplicably seen pale-faced children. Especially when she discovered her son playing with the same pile of stones from the cave, she felt a deep fear. Looking at the pile of stones placed at the door, Tabitha decided to no longer run away and placed a similar pile of stones at the exit of the demon's cave, hoping to summon those children and see what they wanted to do. Suddenly, slight panting sounds came from deep in the woods, and the children really appeared. Tabitha asked who they were, but they just kept approaching step by step, which scared Tabitha into curling up on the ground. Suddenly, all the surrounding noises disappeared, and she realized that the children were gone. Jade happened to pass by and saw Tabitha with a nosebleed. At the same time, her husband Jim found Sheriff Boyd. He told Boyd everything about the strange sounds coming from the walkie-talkie, hoping to join forces to confirm whether the town was indeed an experimental field. However, Boyd didn't immediately agree, but went straight to the owner of the diner. He apologized to her and explained his intention to protect Sarah, because he was more concerned with how to lead the residents out of the town. The owner's son, Kenny, stormed in before his mother could respond. He was furious at Boyd's protective actions. Boyd understood and excused himself. However, when he returned to the church, he found it empty, save for a music box playing a beautiful melody. However, the sight of a woman in white dancing with the music sent shivers down his spine. Boyd couldn't believe his eyes because the woman was his wife, Abby, who had been dead for many years. He was also familiar with the music box. When he saw the strange old man, the box was in the room. At that time, the old man said it was the demon's favorite toy, and they would appear as soon as the music stopped. Boyd was completely immersed in his wife's beautiful dance, but in the next moment, his wife turned into a hideous demon. Everything that had just happened was merely his hallucination. He had not left the diner. For safety reasons, Kenny decided to accompany Boyd. He was curious why all the leaves had fallen for no reason. Boyd didn't pay attention to these because his arm skin started to wriggle again. But when Kenny came close, nothing happened. Boyd didn't know how to explain. Then he heard the familiar melody again, and the music box reappeared. The surprised Boyd slowly approached it. Suddenly, the cellar door was pushed open, and his wife in white walked out. Seeing her cold eyes, Boyd stood there without speaking. Kenny reminded him, making him realize what had just happened was another hallucination because Kenny didn't see anything. Boyd didn't want to explain further and left in a daze. Later, he revealed his fear to the town's doctor, Christy. He felt that there must be something in his body. The old man had touched his bleeding wound and said they shared the same blood. Coupled with the frequent hallucinations recently, Boyd was sure that the evil power hidden in his body was reawakening. Boyd's worsening hallucinations made Kenny less angry with him because his father was an Alzheimer's patient. As the two were talking, Boyd in his room felt a sudden pain in his arm. That eerie music box had appeared again. Suddenly, a familiar silhouette was projected on the curtain next to the sickbed. Boyd couldn't help but rise to his feet and threw back the curtain. To his surprise, his wife embraced him from behind. As she was about to choke him, Boyd pushed her heavy body away and quickly drew his gun. Just then, Mari walked into the room, which startled the intruder. Boyd apologized and then retreated to the corner of the adjoining hospital room, where there was a pool of blood left behind from Kenny's father's death. Suddenly, the figure of the priest appeared behind him. Boyd was not surprised. He knew this was his subconscious self. The other self told him that everyone thought he was crazy. Boyd did not deny it, but he was sure he was sane. It was just that his blood had been corrupted. Just then, Kenny walked in and saw Boyd talking to himself. He chided him with frustration, reminding him that he was the pillar of the whole town. Boyd was also upset, saying that he was almost scared to death. Meanwhile, Donna was worried about the food for the residents. A sudden storm had destroyed the crops, and all the food in the town was now only a few baskets. She had to find a way to help the residents survive until the next harvest. So Donna called the diner owner to Jim's house, and they pickled the remaining vegetables. This could preserve them for longer. Jim, on the other hand, was worried about another problem. The food shortage might cause greater panic among the residents. Perhaps the experimenters behind the scenes were increasing the test level. They loved to stir up fear among the residents. Donna asked if he had a better solution. Then she went into the basement alone, but Ethan followed her. The boy said he had a secret for Donna. He wasn't as strong as his parents thought. He was worried about the arrival of the demon every night. Donna told him that people are different from demons because humans have a range of emotions like happiness, joy, and fear. And fear often brings out great courage. However, the people in the colony house did not turn their fear into courage. When they found their meal portions decreasing, someone protested that there was not enough food left, why they had to take in so many newcomers. When Ellis tried to mediate the situation, he met with disaster. One of the protesters stabbed him in the lung. A large amount of blood gushed out. Fatima was immediately anxious at her dying boyfriend. They had to get him to the clinic as soon as possible, but Ellis refused, saying it was nighttime and they couldn't go out of the colony house. Fatima couldn't care less about that. Perhaps they could try driving away to the town's clinic. The newcomer, Elgin, volunteered with determination. He was willing to accompany Fatima on her journey. The guard at the gate told everyone that there was a demon not too far ahead. Elgin took a deep breath, asking Fatima to wait at the door while he rushed out alone. There was a distance between the place where the car was parked and the colony house. When Elgin jumped into the car, demons from all directions had already started to gather. He stepped on the gas and parked the car next to the steps. Fatima then helped her boyfriend get into the car. Elgin started the car immediately, not daring to delay, as the demons were fast approaching. In the pitch-dark night, the roars of demons echoed from time to time. Fatima comforted her boyfriend. They finally reached the town clinic without major incidents. Hearing the frantic knocking on the door, the town's doctor Christie first peeked out, then hurriedly opened the door. Boyd from the next room rushed over. On seeing his son covered in blood, he was so shocked that he couldn't speak. Christie used an injection to drain the blood and air that were squeezing Ellis's lungs, temporarily saving his life. But he had lost too much blood earlier and needed a blood transfusion immediately. The only person who could provide the matching blood type was Boyd, Ellis's father. However, when Boyd rolled up his sleeves, he suddenly stopped. His blood contained evil worms, which he absolutely could not pass on to Ellis. Everyone thought Boyd had lost his mind. Kenny drew his gun, arguing that it was better than letting Ellis die outright. Boyd wanted to say more, but his arms started hurting again. This time, everyone finally saw the worms wriggling under his skin. Everything Boyd had been saying was true. Kenny took out a dagger, suggesting that Boyd give him the worms. Then he would use clean blood for Ellis's transfusion. Boyd, however, rejected his kindness because only he knew how painful it was to be afflicted by these worms. Then, an idea struck him. He walked straight to the front door. If he couldn't pass the worms to his own people, he could surely pass them to the demons outside. So Boyd pushed open the door and started shouting into the quiet night. Soon, demons began to appear to flex their fake smiles. They seemed to be trying to provoke Boyd's fear and did not attack immediately. Boyd suppressed his fear and took out a dagger to cut his palm. He then swiped at one of the monsters, but the monster's wound didn't bleed, and its smile intensified. Without thinking, Boyd pressed his bleeding palm against the demon's wound. Immediately, he felt something surge into the demon's body. In the next moment, the demon let out a shrill scream, revealing its true form and writhing on the ground. The other demons were attracted by its condition and gathered around. Boyd took this opportunity to escape back to the clinic. He was certain that his blood was now completely safe. After a major blood transfusion, Ellis finally passed the critical period. Boyd and Kenny stood at the door, looking at the fallen demon outside. It turned out that demons could be killed. Boyd decided to perform a dissection first thing in the morning to see what this creature was. The next morning, the demon's body was still lying motionless on the ground. Boyd and the others slowly approached. It seemed that it was indeed dead. Christie shared Boyd's thoughts that a dissection should be performed to find out what this creature was. Kenny, however, felt like chickening out. Who knew what dangers the dissection could bring? Boyd ignored his concerns, told his son to go back as soon as possible. Otherwise, many people would come to check on his injuries. It was better that as few people as possible knew about the dissection of the demon. After Ellis left with his girlfriend and Elgin, they found a white cloth and lifted the demon's body into the clinic's operating room. Kenny reluctantly followed. Boyd instructed him to go to the warehouse to find some tools for dissection, but he still had some concerns. The worms in Boyd's body had passed into the demon's body. Were they still alive now? Mari suddenly ran out of the room, coughing. Christy knew that her girlfriend was having withdrawal symptoms. After settling her down, Christy and Boyd went to the operating room. After everything was ready, Christy put on gloves and undressed the demon. Just as she was about to make the incision, the demon suddenly twitched, giving everyone a jump scare. Christy explained that it was a reflex, but Kenny couldn't take it anymore and ran out of the clinic. Christy quickly followed and asked him why he was so cowardly. Kenny explained that he was not afraid of the monster, but worried about the worms that had burrowed into its body. What if they came out again? Christy was willing to take the risk. The worms were like poison, dissolved into the demon's blood. If they could extract it, it would be a weapon against the demons. But Kenny expressed that he was worried about her safety. Christy didn't respond and just turned and left. At this time, Mari, who had been lying in bed, suddenly stood up. She found that everyone in the room was gone. When she pushed open the doors to the operating room, the demon's body had strangely vanished without a trace. Upon hearing her cry for help, Boyd rushed over and saw another demon slowly approaching. He raised his gun and fired. Mari, however, turned her attention to a music box that had appeared out of nowhere. It turned out that everything had just been a dream. Meanwhile, Christy and Boyd had already begun the autopsy. They managed to pry open the demon's chest. Christy was shocked as she looked at the organs inside. They were clearly human in structure, only completely dehydrated due to lack of water. This revelation sent Boyd into a panic. If there was no blood, where had the worms gone? Christy, too, began to get impatient. In her frustration, she began to stab the body. Boyd suddenly yelled at her to stop when he saw yellow bile seeping out. This could potentially be the poison needed to combat the demons. They quickly collected the bile in a glass bottle. Having completed their task, Christy only wanted to rest with her girlfriend. But for Boyd, this was only the first step of a long journey. He needed to test the effectiveness of the yellow bile on a demon. Kenny mentioned that this was yet another risky move, but he pledged his full support. On the other side of town, after Jim's family had finished pickling their food, their son Ethan wanted to go to the colony house to find Victor. But Jim voiced his objection, but Tabitha had a different thought. Jim then called his wife outside, saying that Victor would definitely lead their child astray. But Tabitha didn't agree, because if it weren't for Victor, she might have died in the demon's cave. Jim brought up the lab theory again. What if the cave was simply a tool used by the puppeteer to instill fear? Tabitha thought her husband was obsessing over this theory. She retorted, asking how he knew the intentions behind the voice on the walkie-talkie were good or bad. After speaking, she angrily stormed back into the room. Jim stood there, lost in thought. Suddenly, a drone appeared from the distance. It belonged to Randall, who lived in the bus. He had been banished from the colony house by Donna because he repeatedly broke the rules. But Jim saw him in a different light. After all, he was the first one to rush in and help when his wife was trapped in the underground cave. Randall explained that the drone was originally meant to be a birthday gift for his nephew, but it was of no use now. Jim believed the drone could help everyone escape the town. Thus, he led Randall to the side of the road where a caravan had overturned. This was the vehicle that Jim had used to enter the town. The two found an antenna inside. Jim wanted to use Randall's drone to send the antenna to the highest point and re-establish contact with the mysterious person via radio. Randall thought it made some sense. However, he also proposed a doubt. To maintain such a large-scale experiment, the puppeteer must have someone on the inside to keep the experiment on track. The question was, who could that be? Meanwhile, Ethan followed his sister to the colony house to find Victor, who was busy measuring the shift in position of a large tree. Perhaps he was the only one in the whole town who noticed these insignificant details. Victor reported that the leaves on the tree were withering, something that had never happened before. Any changes in the town usually signified that something bad was about to happen. On the other side, Tabitha found Jade and asked him why he wasn't surprised at those strange phenomena. Jade's answer was unexpected. He was already accustomed to strange things and didn't find anything in this town surprising. He then went on to recount all the odd occurrences he had encountered. Tabitha was full of questions. She had once lost a few-months-old baby, so she encountered a pale-faced child, indicating that this might be related to one's own experiences. Jade agreed with her, thinking it was possible. But when Tabitha was about to leave, she saw strange symbols in a notebook. She looked surprised, stating she had seen these symbols on the walls of the tunnel before. Back at the colony house, after settling her injured boyfriend, Fatima immediately sought out Donna. She shared with her that she was pregnant. However, before entering the town, doctors had clearly stated that she had a physical defect and couldn't become pregnant. She was afraid that something terrible might happen to her. Donna laughed after hearing this, instantly dispelling Fatima's worries. This town could make the impossible possible, from the never-ending road to the demons appearing at night. The strange things they had encountered so far only brought despair, but her strange experience was a joyful anomaly. It showed that they hadn't been abandoned by God. Later, Julie found Elgin. Elgin completely forgot Boyd's warning when he was with a pretty girl. He then shared the secret of the demon being killed and dissected the previous night. Julie thought this was a good thing. Maybe they could really find a way to deal with the demons. Elgin, however, felt that these scenes had occurred in his dreams before, and the ending was quite tragic. Julie advised him not to overthink, which was a common problem among the townsfolk. She then shared her own solution, which was to immerse her head in a bathtub. The sensation of water hitting her ears felt like a vacation by the sea, allowing her to forget all her troubles. Elgin took her words and immediately filled a bathtub with water back at the colony house. But when he submerged himself in the water, a music box appeared out of nowhere. Immediately, a pair of hands pushed Elgin into the water. All he could see was a terrifying, pale ghost face. Fortunately, when Sheriff Boyd arrived, Elgin was unharmed, albeit shaken. He claimed to have been awakened by someone, and what he experienced was just a dream. Still, when he woke up, he coughed up several mouthfuls of water. Boyd was shocked, but acted nonchalant. He took out the bile extracted from the demon's body, suggesting it might be the weapon to kill the demons. This reassured Elgin, and he suggested smearing it on bullets, like silver bullets used against vampires. Meanwhile, Kenny, staying at home, suddenly heard the telephone ringing. Both mother and son stared wide-eyed, because the phone in the town was supposed to be disconnected and was merely a decorative item. Kenny slowly picked up the phone. The voice on the other end said, "They're coming unless you stop." Just as Kenny hung up, the iron pot began to hum. Upon closer inspection, it was filled with flying insects. One even flew onto Kenny's arm. Thankfully, what he just experienced was a dream, but there was an apparent burn on his left arm, left by the insect from his dream. This was similar to Elgin's experience, indicating that the town might have started a new challenge mode where dream experiences can affect reality. Boyd, with a worried expression, found Kenny and learned about his dream-induced arm injury. He then shared Elgin's idea of making bile bullets. Kenny was quick to respond, saying they would need more bile. Subsequently, the two of them went to the clinic where the demon's body was stored. To their surprise, the two doctors were sitting on the sofa, shivering. Upon inquiry, they learned that strange noises often came from the room where the demon's body was kept. Boyd and Kenny silently approached the room. Upon opening the door, they saw the white cloth covering the body undulating. Boyd swiftly uncovered it, revealing the body covered in insects. Kenny turned pale. These insects had appeared in his dream. Even their humming was identical. Looking at the wound on his arm and thinking about Elgin's previous encounter, Mary couldn't explain why the dreams could cause injuries. She even dreamt of the demon suddenly awakening and snarling at her just yesterday. Everyone stood in silence when Donna suddenly barged in. Upon understanding the situation, she scolded Boyd for not reporting to her in time. Boyd admitted his mistake and immediately took her into the room where the body was kept. Surprisingly, all the insects that had been crawling all over the body were gone. Donna, however, didn't care and insisted that the body should be burnt immediately. Boyd also wanted to destroy the body as soon as possible in hopes that the terrifying dreams would disappear. After the fire was set ablaze, Kenny voiced his concern. "What if the dreams don't go away? Perhaps we're running out of time." Meanwhile, Jim and Randall grouped together to uncover the town's secret in their own way. They connected an antenna to a drone, attempting to establish contact with the mysterious person via radio. In a sudden thought, Randall asked Jim if he had ever seen the demon kill with his own eyes. He stayed in the bus every night and had never witnessed such an event. Even on the first night they arrived in town when numerous residents were harmed, their bodies were never properly identified. Because of that, Randall suspected the demon's killings were someone's deliberate show. Jim found this hard to believe as he had seen Sarah kill her own brother. Randall, however, had his own theory. Sarah's killing could be due to her mental issues, or she was manipulated by someone. Soon after, the antenna connection was completed, but due to insufficient load capacity, the drone couldn't reach the desired height. Randall gave up on this plan. He was more inclined to investigate the mole among the residents. Jim told Randall that only 3 people in the town made the rules: Donna, Boyd, and the deceased priest. Randall immediately focused his suspicion on Donna, with whom he had a disagreement. The two men first went to find Sarah at the church, intending to ask about her past with her brother. Sarah looked panicked and resistant. Randall thought this was promising and decided to add more fuel to the fire. He then suggested that Sarah's brother might still be alive. Just then, Donna walked in carrying a box of clothes. Randall couldn't help but laugh, sarcastically commenting on Donna's perfect timing. She looked bewildered at first, asked Sarah to help mend the clothes, and then ushered both Jim and Randall out of the church. Sarah quickly asked Donna why they thought her brother was still alive, but Donna just took a deep breath and didn't answer. Upon leaving the church, Jim felt that they might have gone too far since they based everything on assumptions, but with no solid evidence. So he made a pact with Randall to sneak into the trailer at night to observe, hoping they might see something different. Of course, this plan was not without its risks. Jim would have to let his family know and bring a talisman to ward off demons. As they left the diner, they bumped into Donna, who asked what they were up to. Jim put on a troubled look and admitted that talking to Sarah was a mistake. He was just looking for answers. Donna felt satisfied, reminding him not to get too close to the hot-tempered Randall. On the other hand, Jade learned from Tabitha that she had also seen similar symbols in the cave. When they arrived near the cave entrance, Jade was extremely excited, thinking there must be a connection. However, when Tabitha mentioned that Victor had also seen the symbols in the cave, Jade was instantly furious. He had made a deal with Victor, and the reward was to reveal all the secrets about the symbols. He didn't expect Victor to choose to hide them. Meanwhile, Victor had found his only friend, Ethan, and planned to give him his childhood jacket as a compensation for neglecting their friendship. Ethan gladly accepted and took him to help at the diner. The young boy accidentally found a small toy in the pocket of the jacket. Seeing this, Victor became gloomy. Suddenly, Jade came to confront Victor about hiding the cave symbols, arguing that the townsfolk should share all information so that they could find a way home faster. To everyone's surprise, Victor declared that this town was his home. Tabitha thought Jade was being a bit too harsh, and she hurried off after Victor. Victor returned home clutching a small toy that Ethan had found. It turned out to be a memento left by his mother before she departed. Tragically, shortly after this, the entire town's inhabitants were brutally killed. At the time, Victor was just a 7-year-old child. Although his time with his mother was brief, from his perspective, he could consider the town his home. Following closely behind, Tabitha found a dumbfounded Victor and asked why he had hidden the matter of the cave symbols from Jade. Victor felt that there was no way out for this town, and any exploration would only lead to worse consequences. Because his mother had warned him the night she left that as soon as she finished this task, they could go home. But the next day, all the town's residents were murdered. Tabitha then asked what his mother had gone to do. Victor said he couldn't remember. Tabitha felt disappointed, but to her surprise, Victor added that he had a habit of drawing to prevent himself from forgetting important things. He then took Tabitha to where his mother's car was parked. Over the years, Victor had been recording important memories in his drawings, but was afraid to revisit them, so he kept them all in the trunk of his mother's car. The moment he saw them, Victor became excited. He finally remembered that he had a little sister, but after their mother left, his sister, out of fear, followed suit. Victor didn't stop her at the time, and thus he lost his sister forever. This was an immensely painful memory for Victor, so he tried to forget it and hid the drawings in this remote place. After calming Victor, Tabitha began to flip through the other drawings. Among them, a stone tower was peculiar. Victor suddenly recalled that on the night his mother left, she had gone to this stone tower, saying she was going to rescue trapped children. As nightfall approached, Randall found Donna with a sincere expression, admitting that his previous actions had been too impulsive. He hoped that everyone could go inside the house and talk things out calmly. Not long after, the two sheriffs returned to the town after burning the bodies. They once again heard the familiar buzzing of the flies. Suddenly, a man covered in blood ran out from a room, wailing for help. Meanwhile, when Jim arrived near the trailer as planned, he was shocked to see Donna tied to a large tree, with a menacing Randall standing beside her. The scene shifts to a resident running out of his house in a panic, yelling for help. The passing Boyd followed him inside and was taken aback to see a mutilated corpse lying in the bed. The man explained that his wife had been muttering the same phrase over and over again while she was napping, before screaming that the demons were out. Then her stomach and mouth burst open. Boyd, in disbelief, asked what the repeated dream phrase was. The man murmured, "They're coming unless you stop." Kenny was astonished by that. He had heard the same phrase before, in a voice on the phone while he was dreaming the previous night. Boyd knew he was dealing with a serious situation. 2 residents had already been injured in their dreams, and now someone had actually been killed and died in their sleep. He had to do something to prevent further tragedies. Boyd instructed Julie to go door to door, telling residents not to sleep that night. Thinking of Sarah in the church, Kenny offered to go and look after her. At this point, Julie remembered that her father had gone to a trailer in the wilderness and was not aware of the dangers of dreaming. Meanwhile, Jim was in a state of shock. He couldn't believe that Randall was intending to offer Donna to a demon. Even though Randall explained that this was just a test for Donna, Jim still thought it was insane. If Donna was innocent, they would be senselessly killing a good person. Jim decided to free her. However, Randall knocked him over and drew a dagger, threatening him not to disrupt the plan. Suddenly, a gunshot rang out. It's Boyd who had arrived. He had originally come to tell Jim not to sleep at night, but had not expected to walk into such a drama. With nightfall approaching, Boyd just wanted to take everyone back to town as quickly as possible. But Randall took out the car keys and threw them into the forest. Now no one could go back. Randall shrugged indifferently, suggesting they all stay overnight together. Julie, waiting at the front door of her home, saw no sign of her father returning. Instead, she spotted Jade and Victor, who announced their intention to spend the night. They had important matters to discuss, primarily concerning the peculiar illustrations Victor had brought along. Kenny took Sarah to the police station by himself. Even though he harbored resentment towards her as his father's murderer, his duty as a police officer was to ensure the town's safety. After spending days consumed by wild thoughts, Sarah developed a new perspective on the town. She believed that it was endlessly creating fear, swallowing it up to become a part of itself. Her brother had been terrified of cicadas since childhood. Now that he was gone, would these nightmare-like cicadas become another source of the town's fear? As though to confirm her words, the sound of the cicadas outside the window became more frantic as night fell. Meanwhile, the inhabitants of the colony house learned about the dream murders from the man who just lost his wife. The people seemed a bit flustered and uneasy. Since Donna was absent, a woman took on the responsibility, urging everyone not to sleep that night and arranging accommodations for the newcomers. On the other side, Boyd and a few others had settled in a motorhome. According to custom, amulets to ward off demons were indispensable. Jim only just learned about the dream murders, and his only wish was to return to his family. He thought he could try to start a vehicle outside using jumper cables, but Boyd immediately refused. It was dark outside, not a time for taking risks. Randall, however, continued to push his luck, suggesting that even Boyd could be a traitor. Boyd was so furious that he nearly threw Randall out of the motorhome. After finally calming Randall down, Boyd began to smear bullets with demon bile. Suddenly, Donna suggested that confronting the demons was too dangerous, and why not let Randall take the risk? After all, he wanted to uncover the truth. Boyd thought it made sense and offered Randall a gun, asking if he wanted to give it a try. The rustling sound of footsteps outside the motorhome signaled that the demons had finally appeared. Randall hesitated for a while before agreeing to try, but Donna suddenly let out a startled cry. There was something odd about these demons because they had stopped a short distance away. In the past, they would surely have come closer, tempting everyone to open the door. Just then, a familiar music box melody echoed within the RV, but the sound was coming from the radio, which had long since been broken. Boyd panicked. He knew every time this tune played, something bad would happen. Suddenly, a thumping noise came from beneath the floor, as if something was trying to burrow its way in. Randall was so tense he smashed the RV window with a hammer. Following suit, Boyd kicked down the glass door. They couldn't stay in the vehicle any longer. As the demon steadily approached, Boyd hastily fired his gun, but the bullets, coated with bile, had little effect. Jim seized the opportunity to start up a car nearby. Suddenly, Boyd heard someone calling out. It was his wife, who had been dead for a long time. He knew this was just an illusion, and immediately turned to join Jim. Poor Randall, however, plunged into the depths of the forest. Suddenly, the urgent chirping of cicadas filled the air. The next moment, countless flying cicadas pounced on him. Meanwhile, in the colony house where they sought refuge, Dr. Christie and his girlfriend Mari had been assigned to Ellis's room for the night. Seeing the belt on the bed, Mari couldn't resist making a joke that they really knew how to have a good time. Ellis was embarrassed and explained to Christie that the belt on the bed wasn't for some strange hobby, but because Fatima was pregnant. In this eerie town, any strange thing could happen. He had to prepare for the worst. What if she gave birth to a monster with sharp teeth and claws? Christie tried to calm his wild thoughts. Pregnancy should be a wonderful thing. But when she returned to the room, she found Mari screaming in panic. She felt there was something terrifying lurking around. Christie kept soothing her. Though Mari was no longer scared, she grew angry. Her predicament was all because of Christie's sudden disappearance. Christie did her best to comfort her irritable girlfriend. Once Mari calmed down, she recognized her abnormal state and suggested Christie use the belt to tie her up, just in case she exhibited any extreme behaviors again. Suddenly, the bell downstairs rang loudly. The man who had lost his wife was also becoming agitated. The other residents thought he had gone mad. Only Fatima kept reassuring them that they were safe here. Elgin forcefully took him upstairs. After finally settling the issue, an old lady nearby praised Fatima and Elgin for handling the situation well. But when she learned that Fatima was pregnant, Elgin seemed to remember something. Suddenly, lights shone from outside the window. Donna was back in her car. Meanwhile, Christie was still caring for Mari. As she stepped out to fetch hot water, Mari grew terrified. She heard the ear-piercing chirping of cicadas, and then was attacked by a swarm of flying cicadas. When Christie returned to the room, she found Mari struggling on the bed. She had never encountered such a strange event and watched helplessly as Mari's breathing grew fainter. At this point, Boyd and a few others had safely returned to the colony house. They had barely settled when they heard a commotion upstairs. Rushing up, they discovered Mari's eyes bulging and turning pale. It was clear she was not far from death. Christie was on the verge of collapse, unable to bear this cruel blow. Just then, Ellis raced in, announcing that Elgin had recalled some content about dreams. He spoke of a little boy in white who kept repeating the sentence, "They're coming unless you stop." A woman found the words familiar and remembered them as an old nursery rhyme. Boyd was bewildered, clueless about what these frequently appearing lyrics truly meant. On the other side, Sarah was in the police station and seemed a little off. Sensing Kenny's indifferent attitude towards her, she knew he was still nursing a grudge against his father's murder. So she again started her repentance mode. Kenny, who had been holding back his anger, could no longer contain it and asked her to take the spare gun from the drawer and do whatever she wanted with it. But when Sarah pulled out the gun, Kenny felt some regret. He worried that Sarah might be desperate enough to end her own life. Fortunately, she wasn't so obstinate and decided to play a game of Russian roulette, leaving her fate to destiny. After placing 2 bullets in the cylinder, she pulled the trigger twice in succession, but no bullet was fired. Kenny then snatched the gun from her, letting out a sigh of relief. On the other side, Tabitha was discussing strange images with Jade, who was amazed that all these things were drawn by children. She pulled him back and reminded him to ponder the meaning of the painting. She wondered why Victor's mom said that everyone could leave the town once the child trapped in the tower was rescued. Recalling the strange, pale children she had seen before, Tabitha wondered if they were not malicious, but seeking help from them. Just then, a horrifying scream came from the living room next door. It turned out that Julie was rolling on the floor, as if fending off terrifying cicadas on her body. Boyd, accompanied by Kenny and Sarah, ventures deep into the forest. Recently, a nursery rhyme has been recurring in many people's dreams. Curiously, Julie, Mari, and Randall are the ones who have recently fallen into distress. Could there be a connection? As they converse, they quickly arrive at a ruin, the same place where Boyd previously encountered the old man in the wall. He believes that the recent bizarre incidents all originated from a music box found there. At that moment, Sarah hears the melody emitted by the music box. Boyd invited Sarah this time because she had previously communicated with unknown entities. Once again, she hears a warning from them. A terrifying force is about to take 3 people, and all the town's residents will die. The only way to save them is to stop the music box and save the 3 lives. This bears some similarity to the lyrics of the nursery rhyme, only it's more explicit. Elgin once mentioned that he heard the nursery rhyme from a little boy in white in his dream. It seems that this might be their way of warning the town's residents about the impending crisis. Even so, Boyd is clueless about his next move. He can't connect the dots of the information pieces, and doesn't even have a clue where the music box is. Meanwhile, Donna looked at the people who had stayed awake all night with a sense of despair. If they couldn't solve the problem of the dreams killing people, everyone would eventually suffer a mental breakdown. She reminded the guard to put the gun back in the warehouse, thinking it might never be needed again. However, little did they know the poor man whose wife had died tragically in a dream was following them. He took out a knife, killed the guard, and retrieved the long gun from the cabinet. On the other side, Jade hadn't given up on finding a way to save people's lives. His method was a bit unconventional, though. He smashed the wine bottles in the bar, hoping to find the hidden truth behind the strange patterns from a different perspective. At some point, the deceased bar owner suddenly appeared behind him. Jade was unfazed by this, guessing it was a mental illness caused by stress. The bar owner suggested Jade explore the demon cave, because Tabitha had once said that the same pattern symbols had also appeared there. However, going there was practically a death journey. The bar owner suddenly brought up his own death experience. When he rushed into the crumbling house, all he wanted to do was save people. Even knowing it would lead to his death, he never regretted it. Jade was touched by his story. For the sake of the whole town, it was worth taking the risk. Not long after, Jade found a thin rope and fixed one end to a large tree. He then took the remaining rope and went into the demon cave. The path inside was winding and rugged. This was the only way he could prevent getting lost. Suddenly, a shadow appeared not far away. Jade was startled, and on approaching, he realized it was a human-shaped doll. When he continued and reached a vast area, he suddenly heard a strange noise. Looking around, he saw 7 children with pale faces lying in different positions. Jade looked up in shock. The vines at the entrance of the cave formed the strange symbols he knew well. When Jade came back to his senses, he found that the 7 children had disappeared. It was as if he had just experienced a dream. On the other side, Tabitha was also working diligently to save her daughter, Julie. She remembered something Victor once mentioned. His mother had tried to rescue some children from a stone tower, promising that everyone would be able to return home. Tabitha decided to visit the stone tower, hoping there might be a way to cure her daughter. But Jim was utterly against the idea because it was dangerous, and Victor's mother never returned after she went to that stone tower. However, in her near despair, Tabitha was ready to make sacrifices for her daughter's safety. She took Victor aside to ask for the exact location of the stone tower. Victor thought for a moment and then drew out a picture, on which was a large tree hung with glass bottles. He told her that if she found this tree, she could reach the tower. Jim seemed to have a premonition of what was to come. Holding his his wife and refusing to let go. Before long, guided by Victor, Tabitha ventured deeper into the forest. They successfully found the legendary bottle tree. Victor revealed that it was here he found his mother's body. In the back of the tree was a large hole. Tabitha had heard that these tree holes can teleport people to different places randomly, but Victor clarified that this particular tree hole was an exception. It could only transport people to one specific location. Tabitha understood that the place Victor referred to was the Stone Tower. Victor offered her a tin box filled with various dry foods. Tabitha expressed her sincere thanks, and without hesitation she crawled into the tree hole. In the blink of an eye, she arrived at a strange jungle. A tall wooden door came into view. Tabitha looked up, only to find this was the Stone Tower Victor had spoken about. While they were close to uncovering the truth about the town, the condition of Julie and others was getting worse. The mental stress on Boyd was immense. He couldn't think of a way to find the music box, so he resorted to speaking to himself in the church, hoping the deceased priest would appear and inspire him. Unfortunately, it wasn't the priest who arrived, but Donna from the colony house. Boyd told her that if they couldn't save Julie and the others, the entire town would be buried with them. Donna was grateful for Boyd's contribution to the town, but she thought if the end of the world was indeed coming, why not attend Ellis and Fatima's wedding first? After all, there was nothing they could change. Boyd thought this made sense. He had neglected his son too much, even ignoring his big life events, so he appeared as the witness at his son's wedding. During the ceremony, Ellis confessed his love to Fatima was like a light in the dark, illuminating his path. The bride was utterly moved, and behind them, Boyd seemed to have a revelation. He murmured about the light in the dark, as if he had thought of something. He quickly bid his son goodbye, and rushed to Victor's trailer to fetch a torch, which was taken from the wall when he left the strange old man's place. Suddenly, a voice of reproach came from behind. It was the pitiful man who was already on the verge of breakdown. He believed all the misfortune, including his wife's tragic death, was caused by Boyd. He pulled the trigger in his hand, but Boyd, enduring the pain, fired back and quickly killed the poor man. Fortunately, the bullet had not hit a vital part of his body. Afterward, Boyd once again found himself in the ancient ruins. The moment he ignited the torch in his hand, he was instantly transported back to the demon's lair. However, the figures bound to the wall were not the strange old men, but Julie, Mari, and Randall. The music box was indeed still in the corner of the wall. As Boyd prepared to smash it, a voice stopped him. To his surprise, it was his wife Abby, who had been dead for many years. She told him that destroying the music box would only prolong everyone's pain. Just as she finished speaking, Julie and the others began to scream like chickens. The entities in the town also joined the chorus of shrieks. Boyd realized the woman before him was a demon in the guise of his wife. Abby hastily explained that none of this mattered. She only wanted to tell Boyd that the source of the demon's power was not fear, but hope. The residents' repeated hopeful explorations of the town were precisely what allowed the evil power behind them to grow and evolve into the ability to kill in dreams. Boyd was so desperate to this revelation, but the only thing he could do now was to smash the music box in front of him. As a result, Julie and the others, who had been deathly ill, suddenly returned to normal. Even Randall, who was the most injured, also recovered with his pupils returning to their natural colors. Boyd looked around and realized he had returned to reality. Everything he had seen before was like a dream, or more like a hidden demon space. Suddenly, the familiar dog appeared again. After a few barks, it ran towards the distance. Boyd wanted to follow the dog, but hesitated because every time he did this before, something bad would happen. After waking up, Julie looked around her bedroom and discovered that her mother was gone. Jim and his son silently looked into the distance. Meanwhile, Tabitha was still climbing the towering stone tower. The toys scattered on the ground indicated that the pale children had indeed been held here. The top of the tower was equipped with a gear mechanism, causing the lights above to sway. Tabitha was really curious about what these things were for. Suddenly, a little boy in white appeared out of nowhere, saying this was the only way before pushing Tabitha off the tower. When she woke up again, she found herself in a modern hospital. Mari said that Tabitha was found in the forest 3 days ago. She hastily opened the window, and the skyscrapers came into view. She couldn't believe she had actually escaped from the nightmare town. Previously, Boyd's ventures outside the town several times narrowly missed the truth about the town. The reason their outcomes were different might be because Boyd at that time was driven by hope, while Tabitha's actions were driven by a despair so deep she wished to sacrifice her life to end it all. This precisely corroborates the premise that the smiling demons can hunt and absorb people's hope to become stronger and reap lives in their dreams.